March 19th, 1945. 50 miles off the coast of Kyushu, Japan. A single Yokosuka D-4Y Judy dive bomber breaks through the morning haze at 7:08 a.m., its engine screaming as it plummets toward USS Franklin. The pilot's knuckles whiten around the control stick. Two 250-kilogram bombs release. The deck erupts in fire and twisted steel. 800 men will die today, but the ship will not sink. And that impossibility will haunt every kamikaze pilot who survives to witness it. Before these, do you have any memories of World War II? I wish you good health. Lieutenant Junior Grade Seizo Yasunori pulls his damaged A6M0 into a climbing turn, black smoke trailing from his punctured engine cowling. Below him, the American carrier he'd just strafed, the one his squadron was told to sink at all costs, burns furiously. Massive columns of smoke rise thousands of feet into the Pacific sky. Secondary explosions ripple across her flight deck. He can see tiny figures, American sailors, silhouetted against the flames, jumping into the sea. His radio crackles with the triumphant voices of his squadron mates. Carrier sinking. Carrier sinking. They've done it. They've actually done it. Yasunori nurses his crippled fighter back toward Kyushu, his fuel gauge hovering near empty, his mind already composing the mission report. He'd seen the bombs hit. He'd watched the explosions consume the flight deck. No ship could survive that kind of damage. The Americans would have one fewer carrier to throw against the home islands. His friends who'd died in the attack. 6 planes lost. 6 pilots who would never return. Their sacrifice had meaning. Their deaths had purchased something tangible. The destruction of an enemy capital ship. He lands at Kanoya Air Base 3 hours later, his Zero barely clearing the runway before the engine seizes completely. The debriefing is jubilant. Intelligence officers nod approvingly as he describes the attack. The hits, the fires, the certain kill. They mark another American carrier as sunk on their operational map. Yasunori accepts congratulations from his commanding officer, drinks sake with the surviving pilots, and tries to ignore the empty bunks in the barracks that night. 6 friends gone. But the carrier is gone too. It's an acceptable exchange in this terrible arithmetic of war. 2 days later, Yasunori is airborne again, leading a fighter escort for another kamikaze mission. The target area is the same. The waters off Kyushu, where the American task force continues its brazen raids against the Japanese mainland. His orders are clear. Protect the special attack aircraft until they reach their targets, then break off and return to base. As they approach the American fleet, he scans the ocean below, counting enemy ships. His blood turns cold. They are steaming in formation with the rest of Task Force 58, as the carrier he'd helped destroy 2 days ago. Not sinking, not listing, not even noticeably damaged. Aircraft are launching from her deck. American fighters, Hellcats and Corsairs, are climbing to intercept his formation. Yasunori keys his radio 3 times. The agreed-upon signal that something is wrong, terribly wrong. How is this possible? He'd seen the bombs hit. He'd watched the fires rage. He'd filed a report confirming the kill. But there she is, still fighting, still launching aircraft, still very much afloat. The psychological impact of that moment, that impossible sight, would ripple through the remaining kamikaze corps for the rest of the war. Japanese pilots began to realize that sinking an American carrier wasn't just difficult, it was approaching impossible, and that realization corroded the very foundation of the special attack strategy. If your death doesn't actually destroy the enemy, what meaning does the sacrifice hold? The story begins not with Japanese despair, but with American innovation born from catastrophic failure. June 4th, 1942. The Battle of Midway. USS Yorktown takes a Japanese dive bomber hit at 12:20 p.m. The bomb penetrates the flight deck, explodes deep inside the ship, and ruptures uptake ducts that funnel smoke from the boilers. Choking black smoke floods the engineering spaces. The ship goes dead in the water, listing. Her power plants shut down. Damage control teams work frantically, but the carrier is crippled. 2 hours later, she's hit by 2 aerial torpedoes. The old girl has taken all she can take. 3 days later, A Japanese submarine will finish what the aircraft started, and Yorktown will slip beneath the waves. But something else happens at Midway that's almost as significant as the battle's outcome. The Navy conducts an exhaustive analysis of why Yorktown died, not to assign blame, but to prevent the same fate from befalling other carriers. What they discover revolutionizes naval warfare. The problem isn't just damage, it's secondary damage. It's not the initial bomb hit that kills a ship. It's the cascading failures that follow. Fuel lines rupture and feed fires. Electrical systems short out and eliminate lighting, pumps, and communications. Firefighting teams can't reach the blaze because passages are blocked or filled with smoke. Wounded systems damage adjacent systems. The ship kills itself from the inside out. Captain Dixie Kiefer, who will later command USS Ticonderoga, spends months studying the Yorktown's damage reports alongside engineers from the Bureau of Ships. They develop new protocols, new equipment, new training regimens. The changes are sweeping and systematic. Every carrier crew begins drilling damage control procedures, not weekly, but daily. Every sailor, regardless of rate or specialty, learns firefighting, shoring, and emergency repair. The Navy establishes formal damage control schools. They redesign internal ship layouts to create redundant systems. They install improved firefighting equipment, better pumps, more effective foam generators. But the real innovation is philosophical. The Navy decentralizes damage control. Instead of a single damage control party trying to manage every crisis, they create multiple repair parties, each assigned to specific zones of the ship. Each party has its own leadership, equipment, and autonomy. If the forward repair party is knocked out, the aft party continues working. If communications are lost, individual parties make their own decisions based on training and initiative. The ship becomes not one organism fighting for survival, but dozens of them, each capable of independent action. By 1943, this system is standard on every American carrier. By 1944, it's been refined through hard-won experience at battles like the Philippine Sea and Leyte Gulf. By 1945, American damage control has evolved into something approaching a science. Repair parties can isolate fires within minutes, patch holes in the hull while under attack, and restore power to critical systems faster than Japanese planners believed possible. The Japanese, meanwhile, operate under a different philosophy. Their damage control is centralized, hierarchical, and dependent on specialized teams. When those teams are killed or the command structure is disrupted, chaos follows. Japanese carriers at Midway burned and sank not because they were structurally weaker than American ships, but because their crews couldn't contain the damage once it began. This doctrinal difference, this fundamental disagreement about how men should fight to save their ship, will determine which Navy survives the war's final months. March 19, 1945, 7:08 a.m. USS Franklin, operating 50 miles off Kyushu. The carrier is in the middle of launching a strike against Japanese airfields when the Judy dive bomber appears, dropping out of a low-cloud layer before anyone can react. The crew has perhaps 5 seconds of warning. Not enough time to man additional gun positions. Not enough time to sound general quarters. Barely enough time to look up. The first 250-kilogram bomb hits the flight deck near the aft elevator. It punches through the wooden deck and detonates in the hangar bay, precisely where 31 fully fueled and armed aircraft are spotted for the next launch. The explosion is catastrophic. Aviation fuel erupts in a massive fireball that incinerates everything within 50 feet. The blast wave triggers rockets and bombs on the parked aircraft, creating a chain reaction of secondary explosions. Within seconds, the hangar bay becomes an inferno. The second bomb hits forward, near the centerline elevator. This one detonates among another group of armed aircraft. More fuel fires. More secondary explosions. Rockets shriek across the hangar deck, punching through bulkheads and starting new fires in previously undamaged spaces. Some rockets shoot out of the hangar bay and across the flight deck, trailing smoke, hitting sailors who moments before were simply standing their watches. The scene on Franklin's flight deck is apocalyptic. Burning fuel runs across the deck like rivers of fire. Ammunition cooks off in staccato bursts. The heat is so intense it melts the deck plating in places. Bodies lie everywhere, some killed by the initial blast, others by the rockets and flying debris, still others by the fire itself. The smoke is so thick that visibility drops to mere feet. Men stumble through the chaos, trying to find their repair stations, trying to help wounded shipmates, trying to simply survive. Captain Leslie Garez, Franklin's commanding officer, faces an impossible situation. His ship is burning from the inside out. He's lost all radio communication. Many of his officers are dead or wounded. The fires are spreading faster than his repair parties can contain them. The list is increasing. 807 of his men are already dead or dying. The smart move, the sensible move, would be to abandon ship. Every indicator suggests Franklin is doomed. Garez refuses to give the order. Instead, he makes a decision that will be studied in naval academies for generations. He doesn't try to fight every fire simultaneously. He doesn't wait for the damage to stop cascading. He prioritizes. First, keep the ship stable. Counter-flooding teams pump water into compartments on the opposite side of the list, keeping Franklin from capsizing. Second, protect the engineering spaces. If the fires reach the engine rooms and magazines, the ship is finished. Repair parties create fire breaks, sealing off passages and compartments to deny the fire a path downward. Third, restore power. Without electricity, the pumps don't work, the lights don't work, and coordination becomes impossible. It's this third priority where American damage control doctrine proves its worth. Franklin's main electrical system is destroyed, but our engineers have trained for this. They bypass damaged circuits, jury-rigged temporary connections, and cannibalize parts from non-essential systems. Within an hour, they have partial power restored. The pumps begin working. The fire teams can finally get water on the flames that matter most. Throughout the ship, repair parties work with an efficiency that seems impossible given the circumstances. Repair 5, stationed aft, finds itself cut off from the rest of the ship by impassable fires. Instead of waiting for rescue or orders, they make their own decisions. They identify which fires they can fight and which they can't. They seal off compartments to contain the flames they can't reach. They rescue wounded men trapped in spaces filling with smoke. They work without supervision, without communication with the bridge, operating on training and instinct. Repair 2, working near the forward elevator, faces a different challenge. A rocket has penetrated a bulkhead and started a fire in a berthing compartment. If the fire spreads, it will reach a magazine containing dozens of 500-pound bombs. The team leader, a chief petty officer named Joseph O'Callaghan, who also happens to be Franklin's Catholic chaplain, leads his men into the compartment. The heat is unbearable. The smoke is toxic. They can't see more than a foot in front of their faces. O'Callaghan personally enters the magazine and begins throwing bombs overboard through a shell hole in the hull. His men form a human chain, passing ordnance hand to hand, racing against the advancing fire. They clear the magazine with less than 10 minutes to spare. By noon, 5 hours after the attack, Franklin's fires are contained. Not extinguished, but contained. The ship is no longer in immediate danger of sinking. She's still burning in places. She's still listing. She's still dead in the water, being towed by the cruiser USS Pittsburgh. But she's alive. And that fact, that simple impossible fact, will be observed by Japanese reconnaissance aircraft that evening. The reports filter back to Japanese naval intelligence. The carrier struck that morning, the one that should have sunk, that was observed burning and listing and clearly doomed, is still afloat. She's under tow, yes, but she's not sinking. The analysts note this, but don't quite understand what it means. Not yet. May 11th, 1945, 9:59 a.m. USS Bunker Hill, operating off Okinawa. The radar operators track the incoming raid, but the bogey count is confusing. Enemy aircraft mixed with returning American fighters. The combat air patrol is vectored out to intercept, but 2 Japanese aircraft, a Zero fighter and a Judy dive bomber, slip through the screen. They're kamikazes, and they're committed to their final mission. The Zero arrives first. It drops out of the sun at 10:02 a.m., its pilot aiming for the clustered aircraft on Bunker Hill's flight deck. He hits perfectly, crashing into a group of fighters being refueled and rearmed. The Zero's 250-kilogram bomb detonates on impact. 11 aircraft erupt in flames. Aviation fuel floods across the deck. Rockets begin cooking off almost immediately. The flight deck becomes an instant conflagration. 30 seconds later, just 30 seconds, the Judy arrives. The pilot sees the burning carrier below and doesn't deviate. He dives directly into the base of the island superstructure. His bomb explodes in the gallery deck, killing or wounding nearly everyone in the island. The ship's senior leadership, the captain, the executive officer, the air operations officer, are all casualties in that single moment. The command structure effectively disintegrates. But Bunker Hill doesn't die. The crew, trained in the same damage control doctrine that saved Franklin, reacts with immediate and coordinated efficiency. Repair parties reach their stations within 3 minutes. They find apocalyptic conditions. The flight deck is covered in burning fuel. Rockets are firing in every direction. The island is a smoking ruin. Fires are spreading into the hangar bay, where dozens of fully armed aircraft are parked. By every reasonable standard, Bunker Hill should follow the same fate as the Japanese carriers at Midway. She doesn't. Repair 3, stationed near the aft elevator, immediately begins counterflooding to correct a developing list. They work by feel and smoke-filled passages, opening the right valves, closing others, maintaining the ship's stability even as explosions continue above them. Repair 5 fights the flight deck fires, not by trying to extinguish them directly, but by creating foam barriers to prevent their spread. They know they can't save the aircraft already burning. Those are lost, but they can prevent the fire from reaching aircraft parked farther aft. Engineering teams in the forward fire room find themselves in an impossible situation. The compartment above them is burning, heating the overhead to the point where paint blisters and metal glows red. Smoke seeps through every cable penetration and pipe chase. The temperature in the fire room climbs past 120 degrees Fahrenheit, then 130, then 140. The men can barely breathe, but they stay at their stations, maintaining steam pressure, keeping the ship's power plants operating. Because they know the moment the boilers go cold, Bunker Hill is finished. Lieutenant Commander Phelps, a damage control officer who survives the attack on the island, takes command of the firefighting effort despite suffering burns to his hands and face. He can't reach the bridge. It's inaccessible due to fire and smoke. So he makes command decisions on his own authority. He orders specific compartments sealed even though men might still be trapped inside, a terrible calculus that prevents the fires from spreading further. He redirects repair parties from less critical areas to shore up failing bulkheads that protect the magazines. He personally leads a team into a smoke-filled passage to rescue wounded men trapped in officers' country. By 11:30 a.m., less than 90 minutes after the kamikazes hit, the fires are contained. 90 minutes. Bunker Hill has suffered 346 killed and another 264 wounded. 36 aircraft are destroyed. The flight deck is a twisted, blackened ruin. The island is gutted, but the ship's engineering plant is intact. Her hull is sound, and she's making headway under her own power. By 3 p.m. that afternoon, Bunker Hill is steaming independently at 15 knots, headed for Ulithi Atoll for repairs. Japanese reconnaissance aircraft photograph her that evening, still burning in places, but clearly underway. The photographs reach Yokosuka Naval Base the next morning. Intelligence officers study them in silence. The carrier should be sinking. Every calculation, every precedent, every example from earlier in the war suggests she should be at the bottom of the ocean. But she's not. She's steaming away from the battle zone under her own power. The reports are shared with kamikaze units preparing for their missions. The effect on morale is profound and corrosive. Pilots who have accepted their deaths, who have made peace with dying for the Emperor, now face a more terrible question. What if my death accomplishes nothing? What if the ship I destroy today is launching aircraft against my homeland tomorrow? The American carrier that most thoroughly demonstrates the evolved state of damage control is USS Enterprise, the Big E, the most decorated ship in American naval history. By May 1945, Enterprise has survived more damage than any other carrier in the fleet. She's been hit by bombs at Eastern Solomons, torpedoed at Santa Cruz, struck by a kamikaze off the Philippines. Each time, her crew has saved her. Each time, the damage control procedures have grown more refined. May 14, 1945. Enterprise is operating off Okinawa when a Zero kamikaze penetrates the combat air patrol and crashes into the forward elevator. The impact is devastating. The Zero's bomb detonates in the elevator pit, blowing a 25-foot hole in the flight deck. The elevator itself, a massive steel platform weighing several tons, is blown 400 feet into the air before crashing back onto the deck. 14 men are killed instantly. Fires break out immediately. The crew's response is almost mechanical in its efficiency. Repair 2 reaches the scene within 2 minutes. They find the forward part of the flight deck impassable, but instead of wasting time trying to fight through, they immediately establish a fire break at frame 30. Repair 5 tackles the fires near the impact site using a coordinated fog/foam attack that smothers the flames in under 10 minutes. Engineering maintains full power throughout the attack, never wavering, never reducing steam pressure. The medical teams triage and treat the wounded with the same trained efficiency. 46 minutes after the kamikaze hits, Enterprise resumes flight operations. 46 minutes. She launches aircraft using her aft elevator and the undamaged portion of the flight deck. The massive hole forward is simply worked around, a 25-foot crater in her deck, and she's still launching fighters to protect the task force. A Japanese pilot named Warrant Officer Kiyoshi Ogawa watches this from 8,000 feet, having survived his own kamikaze mission when his engine failed before he could dive. He watches Enterprise, a ship he just seen get hit, a ship that should be burning and dying, send aircraft into the sky. He turns his crippled plane toward Kyushu, his mind struggling to process what he's witnessed. He will write in his diary that night, "We are told our deaths will stop the American advance, but I have seen the ships refuse to die. How many of us must fall before we admit the truth, that we are losing not because we lack courage, but because they have learned to survive our courage." This sentiment spreads through the kamikaze corps like a contagion. Pilots begin to understand that the special attack strategy is failing not because the tactics are wrong, but because the Americans have adapted. American damage control has evolved specifically to counter the kamikaze threat. Carriers now station additional repair parties near the most likely impact areas, the flight deck, the island, the elevator pits. They preposition firefighting equipment where it can be immediately deployed. They conduct damage control drills specifically designed around kamikaze attack scenarios. They've studied every carrier hit by a suicide aircraft and incorporated the lessons learned into their training. The Japanese, conversely, cannot adapt. They're locked into the kamikaze strategy by institutional momentum, national propaganda, and the emperor's approval. To suggest the kamikazes are failing is to suggest that thousands of young men have died for nothing, a thought too terrible for the military leadership to contemplate. So the missions continue, and the pilots fly knowing their sacrifice likely won't sink the target, and this knowledge hollows out the spiritual core of the entire enterprise. The mathematical reality of American damage control becomes impossible to ignore by June 1945. Japanese intelligence compiles a report that reaches the Naval General Staff. Of the 34 carriers struck by kamikazes during the Okinawa campaign, only one has been sunk, USS Bismarck C, a small escort carrier hit by 2 aircraft. Every fleet carrier hit, Franklin, Bunker Hill, Enterprise, Intrepid, Hancock, and others, survives. Most return to combat operations within hours or days. Several carriers are hit multiple times and continue fighting. USS Intrepid becomes a dark joke among kamikaze pilots. She's hit by kamikazes 4 times between October 1944 and April 1945. Each time she's damaged. Each time her crew repairs her. She's nicknamed the Evil Eye by the Japanese, a ship that refuses to die no matter how many times she's struck. Her survival becomes symbolic of the entire American naval effort, resilient, adaptable, relentlessly returning to the fight. The statistics are even more damning when considering the resources expended. Each kamikaze mission cost Japan a pilot, an aircraft, fuel that can't be replaced, and time spent training that could be used elsewhere. The return on investment is catastrophic. To sink a single escort carrier requires, on average, 7 successful kamikaze hits. To sink a fleet carrier, if it's even possible, would require dozens. And Japan is running out of pilots, aircraft, and fuel. But beyond the numbers, beyond the strategic calculus, there's a human dimension to this failure that corrodes morale more effectively than any battlefield defeat. Kamikaze pilots are told their deaths matter, that their sacrifice will defend the homeland, that they will be remembered as heroes who turned the tide of the war. But when they see the ships they've sunk returning to battle, when they watch carriers they've hit launching aircraft the next day, the narrative collapses. Their deaths do matter, but only in confirming that the war is lost. Some pilots refuse missions. Some intentionally miss their targets. Most still fly, because orders are orders, because their families would be dishonored if they refused, because some part of them still believes in the cause. But the fire is gone. The certainty is gone. And in its place is a hollow fatalism, a going through the motions that characterizes Japan's final months of the war. Lieutenant Yasunori flies his last mission on August 8, 1945. Not a kamikaze attack. He's still regular fighter escort, but the mood is the same. Grim acceptance mixed with quiet desperation. His target is a carrier task force operating southeast of Tokyo. By now, he knows what to expect. The carriers will be there, massive and powerful, surrounded by screening ships and combat air patrols. The kamikazes will attack. Some will get through. Some will hit. And the next day, the carriers will still be there. He's right. The mission unfolds exactly as predicted. 3 kamikazes from his group break through the defenses. Yasunori watches 2 of them crash into a carrier, USS Yorktown, the second ship to bear that name. He sees the explosions, sees the fires, sees the smoke. He's witnessed this scene a dozen times now. He knows how it ends. He escorts the surviving kamikazes back toward the coast, then peels off to check on the American task force one more time. What he sees doesn't surprise him anymore. Yorktown is still there, still steaming. He can see aircraft on her deck, see crewmen moving around. The fires are already under control. She'll be fully operational by tomorrow. He knows this with absolute certainty because he's seen it happen over and over and over. Yasunori lands at Atsugi Air Base that evening, August 8, 1945. He files his mission report, noting the 2 confirmed hits and the target's continued operations. He eats dinner alone in the officers' mess, then walks outside to watch the sunset. Somewhere across the Pacific, American damage control teams are welding plates over holes in Yorktown's deck, testing repaired electrical systems, and preparing her for tomorrow's operations. Somewhere in Japan, another group of young men are writing final letters to their families and preparing for kamikaze missions that will accomplish nothing. The next day, August 9th, the Soviet Union invades Manchuria and the United States drops an atomic bomb on Nagasaki. The war will end in 6 days. Yasunori will survive. He'll spend the occupation years trying to reconcile what he witnessed, the impossible resilience of those American carriers, the futility of all those deaths, the lies his leaders told about the special attack's effectiveness. In 1952, he reads a translated American naval history that includes a chapter on damage control. He learns about the changes made after Yorktown's loss at Midway. He learns about the repair party system, the training programs, the philosophical approach that turned every sailor into a damage control specialist. He learns that the impossible things he witnessed weren't magic or luck, but the result of systematic preparation and doctrinal evolution. He understands, finally, that Japan lost the carrier war not at Midway or the Philippine Sea, but in the unglamorous details of firefighting training and electrical system redundancy. They lost it in a thousand small decisions about how ships should be designed, how crews should be organized, and how damage should be fought. They lost it because the Americans treated survival as a science, while Japan treated death as a virtue. The kamikazes couldn't sink the American carriers because the Americans had learned how to not be sinkable. And that lesson, that truth, came too late for thousands of young men who flew into the sky knowing they would never return.